Please be polite and keep your phones off and stay seated during our speaker. Now, help me enthusiastically welcome our speaker, Tony.
Good evening. My name is Tony, and I am an alcoholic. Let me start by saying thank you for Patrick for inviting me to speak at the second best home group. So I appreciate that, and also wanted to say congratulations to the people that took chips. When I was early in my sobriety, I was never too enthusiastic about receiving chips. But what I was told by somebody far wiser than me is that the chips weren't for me. They were actually for the others in the room to show that the program does work. So congratulations to all that took chips, and congratulations to the newcomers. So we were all newcomers once. It gets better if you stick around. So my sobriety date is September 28th of 2019. I have a home group. It is the Saturday night's Carry This Message speaker meeting here in this building. I agree, yes. I do have a sponsor. He knows that he's my sponsor, and I sponsor other guys. So I will start at the beginning. I grew up on the West Coast. I have one brother who's a year older than I am, and had a pretty normal childhood. My dad was a cop the whole time I grew up, so kind of ironic that I ended up doing all the things that I did. So all growing up, super normal. Did okay in school. I was mischievous just like everybody else. Got into trouble. Nothing really out of the ordinary. And when I was younger, unlike other people that share our disease, I never drank when I was really young. I mean, my dad would give me a sip of his beer when we were barbecuing or something like that. But I didn't have my first drink until I was about 15. And when I was 15, I actually, since my brother was older, he had older friends, and so I would tag along to parties and stuff that they would throw. And so I remember the first time I drank. I don't remember it being a really anything out of the ordinary experience. I remember that I drank Old English 800, and it was horrible. I do remember that I ended up blacking out and I passed out. And the reason why I remember that is because it was really cold and I was sleeping outside on a bench in front of my buddy's house. And I remember it was so cold that I had left my shoes on and my feet were still cold. So that was the beginning of my drinking career. And even with that crummy of an experience, it didn't stop me from drinking again. So all throughout high school, I was a binge drinker. I played football, I wrestled, so on the weekends we would all, drink and party. And looking back now, I know that the people that I hung out with and people that I drank and partied with were just like me, because I never had anybody pull me aside and say, hey, you drink a little too much. I was always around people that saw it as a sign of bravado. So it was always my goal to be the best at everything, and drinking was one of those things that I tried to be the best at. So if you were somebody that could drink 10 shots, I'd drink 20. If you were somebody that could drink 20 shots, I would drink 40. So I was always that guy, and I was always able to drink way more than most people. And so as I got older, it didn't become, drinking wasn't anything that was looked down upon. So my family is Mexican and Italian, two cultures that really respect really strong men, that strong male profile, and so everybody in my family drank. What I didn't realize till I was older is that there was quite a bit of alcoholism in my family. So my grandfather died of complications from a stroke due to alcoholism, and my uncle died on the streets due to his disease. So drinking was involved in every holiday. I drank, for birthdays, everything. Every holiday there was, we drank. It wasn't seen as something that was bad. So as I got older and I started working, I've always been in sales. And so part of that was, as I got different sales jobs, was entertaining clients. And one of the things that we did when we entertained people was we would drink. And it was always a goal of mine to be able to drink more than anybody else, and be able to show people that I could hold my alcohol, which was never looked down upon also. So what I didn't realize is that throughout my life I always did things, whether that was jobs or groups that I was involved in or whatever, where drinking was a part of that. It was always a part of my life. So what happened was, as I got older, my parents began to not even think that my drinking was bad. So I remember when I was younger, birthday parties and stuff like that, my parents would get a keg, and I was like 19 years old. We'd throw big parties and stuff. So it was never anything that I thought that there was a problem with. Never thought that my drinking was too much or, excessive. There would be times where, people would mention stuff, but nobody ever said, hey, you should stop drinking. So that went on obviously through high school and then into college. And actually, when I was in college, I decided that my drinking was way more important than school. So I ended up leaving college. I got an associate's degree and some other trade degrees, but I never, finished an advanced degree because drinking was far more important to me than going to school. So as time went on and my drinking progressed, I decided that I would just embrace it. And so I drank all the time. I became an everyday drinker. So it wasn't just on the weekends that I drank or with friends that I drank every day. And it wasn't out of the ordinary for me. So periodically I would get in trouble with the law. So I got a DUI when I was 18 years old. My license was suspended. I went to jail a couple times for outside influences. Those are also a part of my story. So never really got into big trouble, fortunately. I don't know how I avoided any kind of major time. As I got older, buddies around me ended up going to prison, would get arrested, spent, long times in jail. So it wasn't like I was, obeying the law. I just got lucky enough to not end up doing, any kind of serious time. So fast forward to when I was in my 30s, was still drinking. I took a job as an outside salesperson for a defense contractor that had contracts all over the world. So I got to travel. So it was great. I made great money. Unfortunately, I drank it all away. So I would literally spend just about every penny that I had on drinking, to where I would have to ask fellow coworkers if they would loan me money so I could get stuff to eat. And mind you, my company paid per diem and everything, and I still drank all my money away. So I will say that I've thrown up in many different countries. So that's not anything that I'm proud of any longer, but at the time it was something that I was proud of, because we just drank. And the crazy thing is that even when I was in another country, I always sought out, the people that drank the most. I was overseas one time in South Korea, and the guy that I was the most friends with was an Irish guy named Ozzy, and he was the only person that I came in contact with that could even drink close to as much as I did. And he was my drinking buddy. And, like I said, I've thrown up in many different countries all over the world, and I've thrown up in bars, all that. So my drinking, obviously I was an alcoholic from the very beginning. I, however, don't believe that I was born an alcoholic. I believe that I drank enough to become an alcoholic. So, in that time, I had a son. I was engaged to a person that ended up passing away from an overdose. And so that was a really pivotal point in my life. That is when, at the time, I'd always had a belief in a higher power, but I wasn't maintaining any kind of constant contact with a higher power. So when that happened, I didn't have a solution. And so my solution was drugs and alcohol. And I wouldn't say that I was suicidal, but I did not care if I lived or died. So my alcoholism just took off. That is when I really began drinking to where it affected my employment. I remember resigning from a couple of jobs just to be clear, it wasn't that I wanted to. It was in lieu of being fired. I was allowed to resign. So that was where my drinking was. So things go that same way for the next, about, 6 or 7 years. And so I decided, just like many of us do, to make a geographical. I decided that I would move, and that would be the answer to controlling my drinking. So I moved to Prescott, and my parents at the time were thinking about moving. They hadn't decided where they were going to go, and I heard about Prescott. They said they had traveled through here when they were traveling around to find some place to live. And I decided that was going to be the place I was going to move. So I moved. I'd never been here. I'd never visited here. I'd never even seen it on a map. I just happened to be working at a place where they had a position open here. And so I transferred. So when I got here, I figured it's a fresh start. Nobody knows me. I'll be able to start anew. Well, what ended up happening is it actually accelerated my drinking even more. I don't even know how that's possible, but it did. So I started drinking every night to blackout. So I never said, or I would never be considered somebody that had trouble meeting people. So it wasn't that I didn't have friends, but I started to isolate and just would drink myself to blackout every night. I would drink a fifth or a handle of vodka every night. And so that really started to take a toll on me. Almost lost my job a couple times. Luckily, I did not. But the thing that was different about that is my parents would come to visit me, and now they could tell that there was a problem. So they would start to pull me aside and say, hey, I think your drinking's a little excessive. Maybe you should cut back a little bit. No problem. I'll cut back. And there were periods of time where I would cut back. I would go, maybe a week, 2 weeks without drinking, but there was never any long periods of time. So I left a job, did some other stuff, came back to this job. Well, when I came back to the place I worked, I actually ended up meeting my wife, or she wasn't my wife at the time, but we would get married. So when I met her, we both drank. My wife's a normal drinker. So I would hang out, we would drink. And so we dated, for about 9 months. And I decided that I was going to ask her to marry me. So, I decided that in that time, between the time I proposed and the time that we got married, I would quit drinking. And believe it or not, I actually did. So I quit drinking for almost a year to the day. And when I started drinking again, a buddy of mine actually, we threw a luau. And so we were barbecuing, a bunch of people, everything. And so I was still not going to drink. And so I'm sitting there, I'm helping out with the party and stuff. And buddy of mine, his father-in-law, shows up with this jar of pineapple in this clear liquid. And I was like, what's that? And he's like, well, it's pineapple in grain alcohol. And he's like, would you like one? I was like, no. I'm not drinking. I'm cool. I don't even want to, And so the night goes on, and everybody's drinking around me and stuff, and he's drunk, and he comes over and he's like, are you sure you don't want to try some of it? And mind you, so this jar was about this big, and it was full like that of pineapple, and there was only a little bit, gone. And so I was like, well, what the hell? You know what? I'll have a piece of pineapple. It's not drinking, it's eating. So I had a piece of pineapple, and I was like, oh shit, that's good. And so I had another piece. Well, by the end of the night, I had actually ate the rest of the pineapple that was in there, and I had proceeded to take the jar and pour the grain alcohol into a cup, and I was drinking that straight. So I just got wasted. And so then I was back to drinking again, just as if I'd never stopped. And so I ended up getting married. Things went well. I still drank. I drank every night when I came home. I had this routine where I would get off work, I would go to the store, I'd come home, and I'd make dinner. I would drink while I was, making dinner, and everybody in the family was up. But then as soon as everybody went to bed, it was on. I would just drink myself to blackout again. So that went on for another 3 years. And what ended up happening is I ended up having I had a daughter, and so she was a little baby. And even though I was in charge of taking care of my daughter, because I would be able to work remotely, I decided that it would be a good idea for me to drink. So my alcoholic mind is so crazy that when I would drink, I would watch the clock, and I was like, okay, I know when my wife gets home, I know I got enough time to drink another drink. So I'd make myself another drink. And I remember one of the last times that I drank, I remember watching the clock, and there was like an hour before my wife got home. And by this time, I had already finished a handle of vodka, and I was already on my second one. And so I was like, well, I got time, I can drink. Well, my wife comes home. I'm not even awake. I'm passed out in the bathroom, and my infant daughter is in a car seat in the living room. So needless to say, my wife was upset. She ended up taking me to the hospital. I blew a crazy high blood alcohol level. I don't remember much from that day, but what I do remember is my wife telling me that the nurses and the doctors that worked on me were total assholes, because they were like, look at this guy, there's people that we could be helping, and this jerk's in here because he drank himself in here. So, and then to top it all off, the place that I worked at, one of my coworkers actually left that job to become a nurse, and lo and behold, he was the person that was the nurse that was attending me. So not only was it embarrassing for me, but it was embarrassing for my wife, because, she knew the guy really well. And so he was cool about it. I remember getting out of the hospital, and I don't remember doing it, but my wife told me I slept for 3 days after that. I only got up a couple times to go pee, and then just went right back to sleep. So that was really what I would consider my bottom. And so after that, my wife basically told me that I needed to get help, and I knew that. So I was like, all right, well, I'm willing to get help. I'll look for a meeting. And so the first couple of times that I actually went to a meeting, I didn't even attend. I just went and sat in the parking lot at step one, and I never went in. So the first meeting that I went to was actually at the church on Lakeshore, and it was in a downstairs room. And I'm not a person that gets, frightened of situations, but I remember being terrified. I was terrified. I had no idea what was in store for me. I was completely fearful of what the other people in the meeting would think. And even as I got up to the door, I was like, I'm not going in here. I'm just not going to go in here. I'm not. This is going to be horrible. But it wasn't. It was awesome. There was only like 6 people that were in there. Philip, who I can't believe he's not here, he was in there. And so that really was the beginning of my journey into sobriety. Now, what I will say is that actually wasn't September 28th. I believe that was the 26th or the 27th, one of them. But anyways, the reason why that wasn't the last time I drank was because when I had gotten home, I was doing something and I used to stash my alcohol. Even though my wife knew I drank, I still stashed my alcohol, and I found a stash, and I was like, oh, fuck it, I'll just, the last hurrah, so I drank. But, so the 28th was actually the very last day that I did drink. So I started going to meetings, and I would attend Step 1 regularly. And so one day after the meeting, this guy, approached me and, stuck out his hand and introduced himself and, asked me if I was an alcoholic. And I can't remember, and I'm pretty sure I probably said yes, but at the time I probably didn't believe it. Well, as a matter of fact, I know I didn't believe it. I knew I had a problem. I knew I'd quit, I needed to quit drinking, but I was still in the belief that the alcohol was my problem, that's what it was. It was, if I could just quit drinking, things would be better. I quit for almost a year, and everything was okay, and, that's the solution. Well, this gentleman that reached his hand out to me ended up becoming my sponsor. And so he took me through the steps. And what I began to learn was that the alcohol wasn't my problem. So it was actually my solution. It was the way that I dealt with all of the things that happen in life. So life on life's terms. So when I was happy, I drank. When I was sad, I drank. When I was mad, I drank. Everything. That was my solution. So as I went through the steps and, did an inventory, I realized that I suffer from 100 different kinds of fear. And I have, I've heard people say it, it's a really good way of saying it, but I have a disease of perception. So my head tells me things that in reality are not really the case. I think everybody's thinking, oh my gosh, look at this guy's doing this or what. None of that shit is real. It's just all in my head, but it's real to me. So as I gained time in sobriety, and my head cleared up, and I started to become more involved in the program, there were things that I learned that I feel are the most important in my sobriety. And the first one that I think is the most important is surrender. I didn't realize it, but all throughout my life, I had trouble being honest, and not being honest with people. I could always, I'm a pretty honest guy. Even when I was drinking, I was honest, but I had trouble being honest with myself, and that was the hardest person to be honest to. So what I mean by that is that in my head, I always had to be the best. I always had to do the most of everything, whether that was at my job selling or whatever. And that was all ego driven. And, all the stuff that I thought that, those things are good and they make you feel good and people think good about you. But I never really accepted those things. So I always felt that I wasn't good enough. I didn't sell enough. I didn't make enough money. I didn't do any of that stuff. When in reality, it was just my head telling me that. But that's how powerful my disease is that it can tell me that, and it's as real as you sitting right there. It's that real. So I listened to what my sponsor said. I did what I was told, and I started to become involved in AA. So in that mix, COVID jumped in, and so I will say that I kind of wavered a little bit, but fortunately I had good sponsorship and good fellowship that had brought me back into the program, and I was able to remain. And so I started to, it took me a while, took me over a year, but I started sponsoring guys. And that's what really just, in the book, it tells us about going into that other dimension. That for me was that other dimension. So I remember specifically, I came to a candlelight meeting here, And my sponsor had asked me to take these two newcomers to the meeting. So I came to the meeting, it's nothing out of the ordinary, sitting there, and about halfway through the meeting, these guys are sharing and I'm sharing. It was just really good. And I just had this feeling come over me that the only way I can put it into words is it was similar to being high, like being loaded. And my sponsor calls it the juice. And so I got the juice, and it was just crazy. It was so powerful that I called my sponsor on the way home, and I was like, dude, now I know what you're talking about. I know what it is. I felt it. It was awesome. And I was just, and he, after I finished talking, he was like, all right, now you know what it is, dude. Now you know what to do. And, he always says that, we wish there was a way that we could get a newcomer and you could put your hand on them and they can know what that feeling is like. And you won't know what that's like unless you hang out. So if you stay, you get the opportunity to feel that, and you get the opportunity to feel what it's like to give freely of what you've been given. And it's amazing. And so that really was a game changer for me. And so I started taking commitments. I do have a home group. I took a position as a secretary, and it's been great. And now, don't get me wrong, everything hasn't been wonderful. There's been, spots in life that are tough to deal with. But what I realized is the steps really are truly, like it says in the book, it's a design for living. It gives you the framework that you can live life without drugs or alcohol or, whatever your story is. So for me, it was alcohol. It gave me a solution that I didn't have before. So when times were bad, I had something I can draw back onto. When I was upset or I was angry, I had an inventory that I could do. So it gave me the tools that I was able to deal with life without having to drink. And for me, that was tremendous. And the other thing that was real important to me was fellowship. And I never realized how important that was. It was cool to come in and be a part of the group that was laughing and having fun and doing all that stuff. But what it really did was give me a network of people that were just like me, that if for some reason I couldn't reach my sponsor, I definitely had somebody else to call. I had somebody else to do stuff with. I had people that I could hang out with, that I could talk to, that were just like me and knew what I was going through. So I remember one time I heard a speaker, and he took a trip to the Redwoods. And when he went to the Redwoods, he was walking around, he was just taken by the beauty of the Redwoods. So he decided to lay down. So he laid down on the ground, and when he looked up, what he saw was the trees had made a ring. And so he's just sitting there, looking at this ring, wondering what it's from. And what he didn't realize is there was a ranger standing over him, and he was like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just, laying here and this." And he's like, "Can I ask you a question? What's with the ring for the trees?" And so what the guy told him was that he said that there's no place where you will ever see one redwood. And the reason why is because redwoods can grow to be like 400 feet tall. But what you wouldn't think of is that their roots only go like 8 feet tall. 8 feet deep. So to hold a 400-foot tree, that's crazy. The tree would fall down. How those trees stand is their roots grow together and they support each other. And through that, they're able to grow to amazing heights. I get goosebumps when I talk about it, but that to me is the fellowship that's Alcoholics Anonymous. So with the help of everybody, all of us working together, the sky is the limit, what we can reach. So the point of the circle is the circle, they call it a cathedral. What happens is when a redwood dies, lands on the ground, and the trees that are around it take those nutrients and grow stronger. So it's just like the program. When somebody leaves, we don't shoot our wounded. We welcome everybody back. We use that to grow stronger. It was a perfect analogy. I've always remembered that. Like I said, it still makes me get choked up when I talk about it. So if you're new, get involved. Be part of the fellowship. It will change your sobriety and it will change your life. That is super important. The other thing that's important too, when I work with newcomers, is having a higher power. So a lot of people, it's a touchy subject for them. What I always tell my guys is they don't have to believe anything that I believe in. What my beliefs are my beliefs. Whatever your higher power is that you draw upon is yours. So my higher power, I guess, would be unconventional. I find it the easiest to pray with as busy as life is and family is and my kids and everything. I find that I pray the most in my vehicle. So my higher power is following me around the Tri-City area on a regular basis, trying to keep up with me. And I make it a point to maintain that 11th step. And that's sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him. That's critical. I can tell you right now that if it wasn't for the grace of my higher power, I would absolutely not be able to be sober. I find myself praying all the time. Whenever I have questions, just like it says, I ask for the power to knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And that's all I pray for. Now, obviously, there's times when you get those foxhole prayers when, stuff is bad. And, I do that too. But what I've learned is that that is one of the most important fellowships that I have. So whatever form that comes in, I'm telling you, get a higher power. You need it. You can't. It is very difficult to do without it. And it doesn't have to be anything that there's no preconceived notions that you have to abide by as far as, what the parameters of that relationship are. I always tell my guys, just find something that you can believe in that's greater than yourself and just believe in that. So that's really, wow. I've never been accused of being a man of few words, but I think that's about all I got. So thank you very much for letting me share.